Last week we looked at where is God at night, and today we're going to look at where is God in our work. Where is God in our work? Perhaps you've heard the saying, I owe, so off to work I go. Well, for the vast majority of the American workforce, that seems to be the best reason they have to go to work every day. Seems like we go to work to pay our bills, to pay our taxes, and hopefully there's a little left over that we can enjoy as well. For the majority of the American workforce, it seems that work is simply a necessity to get us what we want and so that we can do what we want to do. According to one poll I read recently, 43% of American workers said they are satisfied with their jobs. Only 43%. And probably as a result of that, over 50,000 people every year quit their jobs because of their dissatisfaction. In a recent survey of American workers, they found that 85% of American workers said they could easily increase their productivity. And over 50% of American workers said they could double their productivity without even trying, if they wanted to. If they wanted to. But why? It's, after all, only a job. How do we as Christians view our work? That's the question I want to look at this morning. How do we view our work? And more importantly, how does God view our work? Is work, after all, the result of sin in the world? Well, if it was, that would explain the attitude of the average American worker, it seems. Or is work something else altogether? Psalm 104 may seem like an odd place to go to find God's perspective on our work. Psalm 104, after all, is a celebration of God the Creator. The psalmist celebrates God who made the universe and now provides for his creatures in the universe. In fact, it's a poetic celebration of Genesis chapter 1. Psalm 104 speaks of work very briefly. Very briefly. But the few words that Psalm 104 tells us about work and the context in which we find those words speaks volumes about how God views our work. So this morning, let's take a look at Psalm 104 and the question, where is God in our work? Where is God in our work? And as we look at this, start applying this to your life. Whether you work at home, whether you help someone else at work, whether you're retired and work around the home, whether you go to a job every Monday morning, where is God in our work? Let's look at Psalm 104. Praise the Lord, O my soul. Lord my God, you are very great. You are clothed with splendor and majesty. The Lord wraps himself in light as with a garment. He stretches out the heavens like a tent and lays the beams of his upper chamber on their waters. He makes the clouds his chariot and rides on the winds of the wing. He makes winds his messengers, flames of fire his servants. You get the feeling of Psalm 104 right there in the very first few verses. The psalmist is about ready to explode with praise for God who has created the universe and now sustains it. You can just feel how awestruck he is with this God. And what a privilege it is for him to serve such a God. Notice his words. Praise the Lord, O my Lord. O my God, you are very great. Much like a faithful subject is honored to be associated with a great and powerful king, the psalmist here's mind is stretched to capacity to comprehend how great this God is. this God who is his God. And so the psalmist begins to describe his God as it were a king. And notice how he describes this king. Notice first how he describes the kingly clothes worn by God. My God is clothed with splendor and majesty. He wraps himself in light. This is no ordinary king. This is no ordinary dress. He wraps himself, he clothes himself in light. And now notice his palace. It's not made with stone and timber. It says he stretches out the heavens like a tent, and his bedroom's on the great waters. My God rests in heaven and sleeps on the waters. It's almost the way he's seeing it. And look at the army of this mighty king. The clouds are his chariot, and he rides on the wings of the wind. And his soldiers are the angels in his service. He makes the winds his messengers, flames of fire his servants. What an army. What soldiers. What a God. And the psalmist says, that's my God. That's my God. But now the psalmist changes his focus. He takes his eyes off the person of God and he begins to look at the work of God. We don't think of God as working, but he's now going to look at the work of God. And his wonder continues. Look at verse 5. He set the earth on its foundations. It can never be moved. You covered it with the watery depths as with a garment. The waters stood above the mountains. But at your rebuke, the waters fled. At the sound of your thunder, they took to flight. They flowed over the mountains. They went down into the valleys to the place you assigned for them. You set a boundary they cannot cross. Never again will they cover the earth. What the psalmist here is describing is a God who created everything and now sustains everything. He now sustains everything. The creation just doesn't continue in some sort of randomness or chaos. The created order continues to be ruled over a sovereign God. God rules over the universe. He set the earth on its foundation. It can never be moved. You set a boundary they cannot cross. At your rebuke, the waters fled. At the sound of your thunder, they took flight. That describes a God who rules his creation with absolute authority. The psalmist agrees with Colossians 1:17. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. The first 9 verses of this psalm can be summarized. All life in this world depends solely upon the sovereign God who reigns over the earth. And this God is my God. Now look at verses 10 through 23. They now build on the reality of a sovereign God who rules over the earth. And because he rules over creation, he now can provide for his creation. Beginning at verse 10. He makes springs pour water into the ravines. It flows between the mountains. They give water to all the beasts of the field. The wild donkeys quench their thirst. The birds of the air nest by the waters. They sing among the branches. He waters the mountains from his upper chambers. God brings rain down upon the mountains to fill the streams. The earth is satisfied by the fruit of his work. He makes grass grow for the cattle and plants for man to cultivate, bring forth food from the earth. Wine that gladdens the heart of man, oil to make his face shine, and bread that sustains his heart. The trees of the Lord are well watered, the cedars of Lebanon that he planted. There the birds make their nests. The stork has its home in the pine trees. The high mountains belong to the wild goats. The crags are his refuge for the rock badger. The moon marks off the seasons. The sun knows when to go down. You bring darkness, it becomes night. All the beasts of the forest prowl. The lions roar for the prey and seek their food from God. The sun rises and they steal away. They return and lie down to their dens. Then man goes out to his work, to his labor until evening. What the psalmist is describing here is the work of God. It's the work of God. Notice in the psalm, God makes, God gives, God plants, God waters, God controls the planets and the darkness. He gives food to the animals and even to man. A couple weeks ago, we were up in Tahoe, and you see all the snow in the mountains, and you see how full the lake is, and how the streams even are full. That's not the random result of some meteorological event. That is our God supplying the needs of his creation. God works in order to bless his creation and to provide for his creation. And just as God works in his creation, so he made man to work in his creation. Work is not the result of sin in the world. Somehow we've got that in our head. Work is the result of the natural order of God's creation. Work is that which gives the believers purpose in the scope of God's creation. Work is a necessary part of mankind. Just as he provides grass for the cattle, just as he provides the tree for the bird to sit in, just as he provides water for the beasts of the field to drink, so he provides work for mankind. Work is the avenue that God created so that he can provide for his people. In fact, it is our work that makes us just like him. You ever think of that? It is our work that makes us like him. Look at Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 1. Don't lose your place in Psalms. But go to Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. Then God said, let us make man in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. He created them. What does it mean to be made in the image of God? It doesn't mean that we're made with a soul, even though we are. According to Genesis 1, to be made in the image of God means that we work like God. We were made to work. That's our purpose in life. God works daily in the governance of his world, and he's made us to work as well. Let's go back to Psalm 104, beginning at verse 24. How many are your works, O Lord? In wisdom you made them all. The earth is full of your creatures. There is a sea vast and spacious, teeming with creatures beyond number, living things both large and small. There the ships go to and fro, and the Leviathan, which you have formed to frolic, in other words, to play in the ocean. Now notice, these all look to you to give them their food at the proper time. When you give it to them, they gather it up. When you open your hand, they are satisfied with good things. But when you hide your face, they are terrified. When you take away their breath, they will die and return to the dust. When you send your